The Lebanon, Missouri detectives who stumbled upon Cassidy's remains still don't know to this day who sent them the tip. Who would have a photo of Cassidy in a cage, inches away from death? The disturbing discovery led to more questions than answers, and the question that kept repeating was very obvious. How could someone promise a person shelter and safety while planning the exact opposite?
This is where she was caged, according to court records, before it recently burned to the ground.
Cassidy trusted the wrong people. She was repaid with a fate much worse than death, and no one was there to help her.
She's been missing for months. 2 men have been charged with kidnapping and terrorizing her in the Ozark area.
But let's make one thing clear before we go on. Cassidy Rainwater is not to blame for what happened to her. The responsibility for this heinous crime lies solely with the 2 monsters that took her.
I'm hearing about a guy who's got women locked up and possible torture.
Let's honor her by telling her story and discussing stranger danger in an increasingly terrifying world. Dallas County, Missouri is a quiet place. The whole county is home to 17,000 people, and it consists of lots of forests and remote villages far away from bustling towns. It might sound idyllic in any other context, but in this case, it only makes it creepier. In July 2021, a 33-year-old woman named Cassidy Rainwater disappeared from Lebanon, Missouri. What began as a missing persons case soon unraveled into one of the most horrific crimes in recent memory. The details that emerged shocked the local community and the entire nation.
She was hoping to get her life back together, and at that time, she was just kind of bouncing, from place to place.
Cassidy had 2 children with different fathers. One of the dads, Ben, spoke to the media following her disappearance and explained the tough position Cassidy was in.
The last conversation her and I had, it was actually, I had offered to get her a place to help her get back on her feet. And she was in a bad way. Like, at that time, I'm pretty sure she was homeless. And she and I were talking, it was just like, come to Kansas City. We'll get things figured out. It's just crazy. I don't know. It's just, my mind didn't go to she's fine. My mind went to something happened.
You know how horrible things tend to happen to people in vulnerable situations? Cassidy's baby daddy knew something was really off when she went missing shortly after their last phone conversation. Cassidy wouldn't have passed up the opportunity to live with him for a while and find a job in Kansas City. She was thinking about it, but she wouldn't ghost him without an explanation. Other friends and family described her using similar words, kind-hearted but struggling. She had given birth to her first child at age 17 and did not have custody of either of her children. Court records indicate she was married, but estranged from her husband. Cassidy was not in close contact with anyone in her immediate family, so it took 6 weeks into her disappearance for someone to raise the alarms. Sadly, in many cases involving vulnerable people, Cassidy received help 1 minute too late. Cassidy was last seen in mid-July 2021. On August 25th, 2021, Cassidy's aunt, Cora Terry, who is also the legal guardian of one of Cassidy's children, contacted the Dallas County Sheriff's Office to report her missing. Cora told the police that she hadn't seen or heard from Cassidy in over 6 weeks, which was highly unusual. Cora provided an important lead. She said Cassidy had left with a man named Jim in a silver GMC truck. She believed Jim had a cabin somewhere on Moon Valley Road in Dallas County. This information would prove crucial to the investigation. ADVD last said she saw her during a DFS visit, and Cassidy left with a male by the name of Jim. Unknown last name. He drives a silver GMC truck and has a cabin somewhere on Moon Valley. Based on the information from Cora, deputies conducted a wellness check at the home of 58-year-old James Phelps on Moon Valley Road on August 25th. Cassidy was not there, and there were no obvious signs that she had been staying at the property. A week later, on September 1st, police returned to interview James Phelps again. Phelps told investigators that Cassidy had stayed with him for a couple of weeks while trying to get back on her feet. He claimed she had been talking about going to Colorado. According to Phelps, Cassidy had left in the middle of the night about a month earlier when someone picked her up at the end of his driveway. He said he hadn't seen or heard from her since. At this point, with no evidence of foul play, police continued to treat Cassidy's disappearance as a missing persons case. this would soon change dramatically. On September 16, 2021, the investigation took a creepy turn. The FBI contacted the Dallas County Sheriff's Office with a disturbing cyber tip they had received. An anonymous source had sent the FBI a series of photographs that appeared to show Cassidy Rainwater in captivity. The photos were allegedly found on the dark web, a section of the internet not accessible through normal search engines that are often used for illegal activities. These images showed a partially nude woman, believed to be Cassidy, being held in this cage. She appeared to be in extreme distress. The photos only got worse as the FBI agents scrolled down. The woman was being terrorized in every way imaginable. Finally, her life was taken. And this horrific moment was also captured on camera. The agents did not have a lot of time to think about who had sent this tip. This would be a question for later. Now, they had to act fast. This tip provided the probable cause needed for investigators to obtain a search warrant for James Phelps' property. The next day, September 17th, law enforcement descended on the Moon Valley Road cabin to execute the warrant. What investigators found at James Phelps' property was the stuff of nightmares. The cabin and the surrounding area matched the background seen in the disturbing photos of Cassidy. Inside, they located the cage where Cassidy had been held captive. Even more horrifying, they discovered images on Phelps' phone showing Cassidy's body bound to a gantry crane device typically used for field dressing deer and other game animals. Other photos depicted her body in various states of dismemberment. Cassidy was treated like meat. This monster was getting a kick out of it, and he shared every single photo of this horror show on the dark web. And you guys, it gets even worse. In the freezer, police found packages of what appeared to be labeled meat, labeled with the date 7/24, believed to be July 24th, the approximate date Cassidy was killed. It was meat, except it did not belong to an animal. Skeletal remains were also found scattered on an adjacent property. In total, over 200 pieces of evidence were collected from the scene. The crime lab would later confirm that the human remains in the freezer belonged to Cassidy Rainwater. James Phelps was immediately arrested at the scene on September 17th. As he stayed quiet in the interrogation room, the detectives decided to have another look at his phone. That was a crucial decision. Phelps's phone provided another key lead. It implicated 56-year-old Timothy Norton as an accomplice. Norton was brought in for questioning on September 19th. At first, Norton denied any knowledge or involvement in Cassidy's disappearance. However, he lived with Phelps. That's right, these two were buddies and roommates. He could not deny seeing, hearing, or smelling everything that the detectives had seen on Phelps' phone. After being confronted with the evidence placing him at Phelps' property, he confessed to helping restrain Cassidy on July 24th. Both men were initially charged with kidnapping. As the investigation progressed and more evidence came to light, prosecutors added charges of first-degree murder and abandonment of a corpse. During questioning, Timothy Norton provided a chilling account of Cassidy's final moments. He told FBI agents that James Phelps had called him over to help subdue Cassidy while she was sleeping on the living room floor. Norton saw no problem with it. His roommate asked for his help, so he obliged. Norton admitted to holding Cassidy's legs down while Phelps strangled her and placed a bag over her head. After she was dead, they took a short break before carrying her body outside. Norton said that Phelps then bound Cassidy's body to the gantry crane device and began dismembering her. According to Norton, he helped Phelps carry Cassidy's remains back into the house, where they placed parts of her body in the bathtub. Investigators believe this is where they continued processing her remains before packaging and freezing some parts. This confession, along with the physical evidence collected at the scene, painted a nightmarish picture of Cassidy's final days and the cruelty she endured.
I'm hearing about a guy who's got women locked up and possible torture.
Oh, it's shocking. It's devastating. It's shocking. It's not something you deal with on a daily basis.
As Cassidy's shocking story was quickly making headlines throughout the U.S., Missouri detectives had one last thing to do: try to understand why these monsters had committed this atrocity. Was it their first one? Speaking to their neighbors, because they didn't have any friends, detectives learned that these two were high school buddies. They'd attended school together and had stuck with each other all this time, while no other people really gravitated around them. Their neighbors described them as seedy. They were creepy, silent types who did not speak to other people. It always seemed like they were sharing some secrets that they didn't want other people to know. After finishing high school, authorities also learned Phelps had enlisted in the Army. But that didn't last long, and after that, his career is completely unknown. He'd lived on his Moon Valley property since the early 90s. Norton had joined the Marines after graduation. Then he got married and divorced twice. During these years, he worked as a truck driver, but although he seemed a little more involved in society than his friend, Norton never forgot about Phelps. And when Norton moved in with Phelps, things took a turn for the worse. As the investigation deepened, it became clear that this was not a crime of opportunity or impulse. Investigators uncovered digital messages between Phelps and Norton spanning several months, in which they discussed and planned Cassidy's murder. They even planned her murder date. Indeed, that was July 24th, the same date detectives found on the meat packages. The level of premeditation was staggering. These men had carefully selected their victim and prepared to carry out this horrific act long in advance. They took advantage of Cassidy's vulnerable position as someone struggling with homelessness to lure her in under the guise of helping her. And yeah, your fears are right. Evidence suggested Cassidy may not have been their first or only intended victim. Prosecutors later revealed that Phelps and Norton would scout for potential victims at the local Walmart and attempt to lure young women online. They seemed to have a particular interest in girls between 12 and 14 years old. While no evidence of other victims has been found to date, the possibility that Phelps and Norton had done this before, or planned to do it again, sent shockwaves through the community. And before the Missouri detectives could find any more evidence on their property, it blew up. Phelps and Norton had booby-trapped their own place.
Fire reports reveal homemade bombs with tripwires on the property.
On October 4th, a few weeks after their arrest, their entire place burned down, and all other evidence was lost.
Against her will.
In a cage. I can't imagine.
I don't understand what makes people get like that.
One of the most chilling aspects of this case was the connection to the dark web. The initial tip that broke the case open came from someone who claimed to have found photos of Cassidy in captivity on dark web forums. The dark web refers to websites that aren't indexed by search engines and require special software to access. While not inherently illegal, the anonymity provided by the dark web makes it a haven for criminal activity, including human trafficking, drug sales, weapons, and the exchange of illegal photos and videos. The fact that images of Cassidy were being shared on the dark web raised disturbing questions. Were Phelps and Norton part of a larger network? Were they selling photos or videos of their crimes? The full extent of their dark web activities may never be known. What we do know is that the internet and social media have created new avenues for predators to find and exploit victims. The relative anonymity of online interactions can make it easier for criminals to hide their true intentions. As news of Cassidy's disappearance and the subsequent arrest spread, the tight-knit community of Lebanon was rocked. Rumors and speculation ran rampant, especially on social media platforms like TikTok. Some of the rumors that circulated included claims that Cassidy had been found skinned and hanging from a tree, that Phelps and Norton were selling human meat on the dark web, and that they had been engaging in these activities for 16 years. Dallas County Sheriff Scott Rice attempted to tamp down on what he called misinformation in a Facebook post on October 7th. He encouraged people not to listen to social media influencers sitting in their apartment or their mommy and daddy's basement eating great value cheese puffs and drinking boxed wine with intentions of being a social media superstar. Sheriff Rice claimed that 99.999% of what has been posted to social media is crap. However, as more details of the crime came to light, it became clear that some of the rumors weren't too far off from the horrifying truth. Phelps had a profile on a BDSM website, and many fear that he used it to lure girls to his creepy cabin. And the fact that he booby-trapped his own property goes to show that there was more evidence there. Evidence he wanted destroyed before the detectives could get to it. The community's fear and desire for information was understandable, given the heinous nature of the crime. However, this case highlights how quickly misinformation can spread in the absence of official updates, especially in the age of social media. In November 2021, James Phelps and Timothy Norton were formally charged with first-degree murder, kidnapping, and abandonment of a corpse in connection with Cassidy Rainwater's death. Both men pleaded not guilty to all charges. However, Norton's interrogation was played in court.
It just kind of happened. Things like I told somebody else once, it kind of went sideways.
And that he?
I believe I deserve to die. And I'm ready for that. I'm ready to take a life.
Prosecutors announced their intention to seek the death penalty against James Phelps. It would have been the same for Norton if he hadn't spoken to his attorney. Timothy Norton agreed to a plea deal in April 2023, pleading guilty to first-degree murder in exchange for a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole.
After 2 years, Timothy Norton, the last person in the Cassidy Rainwater investigation, learned he will serve life without parole.
There's no other sentence eligible in this case besides life without parole. So we knew if he entered a plea, that would be the sentence.
James Phelps was also given an Alfred plea, avoiding a lengthy trial and avoiding the other charges apart from first-degree murder. He will also die in prison. While these legal proceedings may bring some closure, they can never undo the trauma inflicted on Cassidy Rainwater, her family, and the entire community.
It's just, it's a crazy world we live in, and I can't even process the feelings right now, to be honest with you.
Several potential warning signs emerged in Cassidy Rainwater's case. Her vulnerable position as someone struggling with homelessness and working to regain custody of her children made her an easier target for predators. Going to stay at a remote cabin with James Phelps, someone she didn't know well, was a risky decision. The cabin's isolated location on a sparsely populated rural road enabled Phelps and Norton to carry out their crime undetected. When Cassidy stopped contacting friends and family, it should have raised immediate alarm bells. While James Phelps and Timothy Norton did not have extensive criminal records, even minor past offenses can sometimes indicate future behavior. Their attempts to lure victims online demonstrate how predators use the internet to find potential targets. It's important to note that the presence of these factors doesn't guarantee criminal intent, nor does their absence ensure safety. However, awareness of potential red flags can help individuals make safer choices and possibly avoid dangerous situations. The tragic case of Cassidy Rainwater reminds us of the importance of personal safety awareness. While it's important to prevent all crimes, individuals can take steps to reduce their risk of becoming victims. It's crucial to trust your instincts. If a situation or person makes you uncomfortable, it's better to be cautious than ignore your intuition. Be wary of isolation and cautious about going to secluded locations with people you don't know well. Try to meet new acquaintances in public places when possible. Maintain regular communication with friends and family, especially when making major life changes or meeting new people. Before accepting help or accommodation from someone, try to verify their identity and intentions by asking for references or checking with mutual acquaintances. Always have a safety plan. Make sure someone knows where you are and who you are with, and consider setting up regular check-ins with a trusted contact. Be cautious online about sharing personal information or making plans to meet people you've only interacted with virtually. Know your local resources for people in need, such as shelters and social services, as legitimate organizations can provide safer alternatives to accepting help from individuals. Finally, look out for others. If you notice someone in a vulnerable position, see if there are ways you can help or direct them to appropriate resources. The murder of Cassidy Rainwater is a tragedy that will haunt Lebanon, Missouri's community for years to come. It's even more unfathomable for her loved ones. Cassidy had 2 children, and while they grew up with other caregivers, they found out what happened to their biological mom. And imagine how hard it is to live with this knowledge, or the fear that they might live with knowing they live in a world where things like this can happen in the first place. Cassidy's story serves as a grim reminder that danger can lurk, even in seemingly safe, small towns, and that predators can hide behind the facade of normalcy. And her story is still haunting everyone wondering about that anonymous tip. Did this person know about Phelps and Norton before? Did these monsters post more horrors on the dark web before the summer of 2021? They'd stalked victims before, their phone records showed it. We might never know, following that explosion, if they had other bodies on that property. But it's a sobering thought to think that Cassidy was only their last victim. This case brings to light several important issues: the vulnerability of homeless and struggling individuals, the potential dangers of trusting strangers, the dark side of the internet, and the importance of community awareness and involvement in preventing and solving. It's crucial to remember that Cassidy Rainwater is not to blame for what happened to her. The responsibility for this heinous crime lies solely with James Phelps and Timothy Norton. However, by learning from this tragedy, we can work towards creating a safer society and preventing similar crimes in the future. As we reflect on Cassidy's story, let us commit to looking out for one another, supporting vulnerable members of our communities, staying vigilant against those who would do harm to others. By raising awareness, educating ourselves and others about personal safety, and fostering a sense of community responsibility, we can honor Cassidy's memory and work toward a world where such tragedies are less likely to occur. In the end, the best defense against predators is a community that stands united, aware, and unwilling to look the other way when something seems amiss. Let Cassidy's story serve not just as a warning, but as a call to action for all of us to play a part in creating a world where peace is the norm, not the exception. Thanks for watching, you guys. Let me know your thoughts in a comment down below, but make it a kind one. Cassidy's family needs thoughts and prayers right now. And before you go, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that bell button. See you soon, and stay safe.